Welcome to the Fantasy Draft Room pre-combine rookie mock 2.0. I don't know which one this is at this point, but we are now on to another rookie mock pre-combine. Going to talk some hype here, especially with this weekend having the combine kicking off. Cody, start us off here. What are you going to be doing with a 101?
See, well, you said me is going to take the 101, but things are happening here. But I'm not going to take the 101 right off the bat. We're going to play a little game because you were potentially trying to plan out your picks. I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to pin it back on you, and neither of us is going to know which one has the 101. Chase, I want you to guess a number between 1 and 10.
7.
Okay, odds are going second, evens are going first. Therefore, I do actually have the 101, and I'm going to take none other than Caleb Williams at the 101. It is still a super flex league, 12 teams, especially when we're leaning into that format. I love myself some Marvin Harrison Jr., but you can't deny the talent that Caleb Williams has as the 101 quarterback in this draft, in both the NFL draft and rookie drafts as well. Everything that you're going to hear, you've definitely already heard before we've been talking about it on this channel. Unfortunately, we won't be able to get to see him at the combine along with a couple of these other quarterbacks at the combine. So we won't get any new information. He's also saying he's not doing any medical testing, which is interesting for Caleb Williams. Even though he's showing up, he's not giving any of the teams his medicals, which is a very interesting decision. Caleb Williams has made a couple of interesting decisions, and news and notes from his camp coming out during the timeline that we've been leading up towards this NFL draft cycle. One of the weirdest situations, I think, for many of these players that we assume to go for the 101, but I'm still going to take him here. None of that matters. The play on the field for the last 2 years is what we really do care about. And even 3, if you want to go all the way back to Oklahoma, Caleb Williams is still the 101 for me. We're still playing Superflex, and I'm going to take the best quarterback in this draft.
Yeah, I don't blame you here at all. Superflex still, you can go with the variance if you really wanted to go after like a supposed superstar guy like Marvin Harrison. And I'm actually going to take this 102 pick here and probably surprise some people as well. I'm going to stick with the quarterback position. I'm going to go Jaden Daniels. I've been a big fan of Drake May. I've been a big proponent of him. But when you're playing the market, when you're playing really what people think about some of these guys, there's been some ups and downs as far as some offseason news about Drake May, or just as far as people scouting him, saying that he looked like Mason Rudolph with a worse arm or something. I was just like, yo, come on. But it's going to taint people's perspectives on who he is. I do think Jaden Daniels he is an actual plus with his legs. He is a, stud on the ground. It's going to come down to landing spot for him, especially. But if he can go to Washington potentially with some weapons already in place, and then being able to utilize his legs, love what Jaden Daniels could do in the Superflex type format.
I love it too. I would have picked Jaden Daniels at the number 3 if you would let him slip to me. So we then go into, again, do I take the quarterback or do I take the wide receiver? And I think I'm going to lean into what you were just talking about. I think I'm going to lean into the fact that the community is souring on Drake May. I think that he's also going to go to currently what I have this draft playing out as. If it happens like this, a lot of people are saying it's a battle right now between Jaden Daniels or Drake May to go to the Washington Commanders. Whoever doesn't go there, I still think is going to go to the New England Patriots. You're going to hear a lot of news and notes about all of these teams who want to move up to go get a quarterback. Well, you know what doesn't matter if a team can go up to get a quarterback? If one of the top 3 teams in the New England Patriots, the Washington Commanders, or the Chicago Bears don't move out of 3, or they don't want to move out of 3, none of the other teams can move up. And that's where I think Drake May ends up falling to the New England Patriots system right now. And that's going to sour people, along with the fact that he's the least like quarterback, it seems like, from a community aspect in these top 3 quarterbacks. So I am going to lean into the best wide receiver in this class, even though it might be a little bit closer to some people. Some people may have Malik Neighbors over Marvin Harrison Jr., but everything is there profile-wise for Marvin Harrison Jr. You don't need to hear us talk about it anymore. I'm going to go with the wide receiver 1 in this class, and I'm going to leave you what I assume here is going to be Drake May, but you could be in the same exact conundrum of, do you go with the quarterback or do you go with the wide receiver, as we are really stacked and loaded in this type of format 5 deep right now.
Yeah, I do think that I feel like I have to take Drake May, so you can go ahead and plug that in. I'll kind of explain why. At this point, I mean, if he's a top 3 pick, clearly everything that the New England Patriots do need, if that is the team that in fact drafts him, it's probably the worst of the 3 landing spots as far as weapons in place, things like that. However, I'm not going to let that kind of deter me from the talent that is Drake May. Just because Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi aren't it doesn't mean Drake May can't be it. So I do feel like they will add some other pieces in that wide receiver room. They need to do something, I guess, is the bottom line, right? So they need to do something. What they have isn't working. And if they are going to, in fact, use the number 3 overall pick, my assumption is with a new regime in place, they're going to build a little bit differently. So I'm going to take Drake May here, top 3 quarterback, going to take the capital.
Yeah, and I that's where I'd go to, even though I don't have much separation between who I'm going to take here at 5 and who I took at 3. We're going to have to lean back in, and I think this is pretty much going to be chalk for a lot of people, at least within the top 5 in a 12-team Superflex format. We could see another name sneak in there, depending on how much you value a different position, but Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison is almost what came out of my mouth. Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors are by far and away the 2 best wide receivers in this class. I have them in a different tier personally than I do number 3 for most people, which is Rome Odunze. And I have them in a different tier just because of the production they put on the field, the type of tape that you see whenever you turn on the tape as well. Malik Neighbors is not that far off from Marvin Harrison. He just doesn't have the name. He doesn't have the frame. He doesn't have the size. But what he does have is one of the best stop-start abilities, the best agility within the wide receiving game that we have seen come out of the collegiate game for one of the last couple of years. If you use the term generational, I might come through the screen and punch you. I'm not going to use that. But in the last couple of years, he's been one of the best wide receiver prospects. He would be a wide receiver 1 prospect in almost any other class. He goes off the board here to me at 5, and I don't have much more to say about it than you've probably already heard. I absolutely love what Malik Neighbors brings to the table as far as the wide receiver position goes.
And, I'm just going to take the other name. And I do think that there is a separation between 1, 2, and 3 in the wide receiver realm. But I am going to go with Rome Odunze. And I know everyone's like, oh my gosh, how can you not take Brock Bowers? We actually play in predominantly, 1.75 minimum tight end premiums. So we have a legitimate tight end premium that's worth taking Brock Bowers at this point. I do think Brock Bowers can be very good. We've seen a lot of young rookie tight ends come in and break out, but I do believe that he's going to really rise this weekend. He's going to have a big time showing at the combine is what I feel. If that doesn't happen, this may change my perspective completely, but I do think that he's going to showcase his abilities this weekend and truly establish himself as, while he may not be Marvin Harrison or Malik Neighbors, but he could be a legitimate number 1 in an offense. And I do think that that's something that I value when it comes to fantasies. Can he be a main target share earner given his situation? Landing spot's going to be key. Who's throwing them the football? All of that's going to matter. But right now, today, I do feel like that Rome is going to be a big time riser, and I'll take him here at 6.
And definitely a different tier for me as well within the wide receivers. But we didn't specify it going into this, but would this change for you at all? You said we play in predominantly tight end premium leagues, but would it change for you at all if we're saying it's a 1.5 tight end premium, the 2 tight end premium, start 2 tight ends? Is there any format where you would actually make that break and take the Brock Bowers over it? And what do we want to go forward the rest of this process doing? Because I do think that depends on where we put Brock Bowers within the 7 to 12 range.
I think we're going to go keep 175 for this exercise because that's kind of what we do standard. If it was a 2 tight end or a 2.0, I definitely would be considering Brock Bowers a little bit in this spot here. So that's, I think, the breaking point. It's a very minute thing. I could go Bowers here and not have a big issue, but today I'm going to take Rome just because I think the wide receiver position is so polarizing, and I do think that he's going to get very, very good draft capital this upcoming draft.
And while you're giving me that 1.75 tight end premium capital, it will go back to me, and that's where I will go with Brock Bowers, right at the top of the ADP board as well. Now, there is going to be, we'll see. I guess there's a little bit of a concern. We don't know right now as we're recording this whether he actually will test on the field or not. Interesting that that's not already come out, as he is there not in Mobile. We already did that a couple weeks ago. He is there in Indianapolis at the combine, but there's some rumors coming out that he might not test. We might not see what all of those on the field abilities are, but I assume we will at least start to see at least the height and weight, what I think is going to give a lot of people concern about. If you're in that old school mindset of this is what a prototypical tight end 1 has to be, he has to be 6'4", he has to be 245, 250 pounds. If you're hoping for that from Brock Bowers, you're not going to get it. Like he might come in 6'2", 6'3", and maybe like 235, 240, a little bit in there. He's not going to be an absolute Raz score monster, but you can't deny what he's done on the field for the last 3 years at Georgia and tell me that he's anything different than tight end one, and he's anything different than coming in here as a top 8 pick in almost any format in the Superflex realm. It's Brock Bowers here, and then I think we get into a much different tier past this top 7.
Yeah, I do think it is a 7, and this is kind of where we have that break. I think the rest of these guys that we're going to get into as far as wide receivers and where it may be more less name based than anything, it's going to basically shift depending on landing spot and draft capital that these guys get. But I'm happy with this tier. I'm still very happy with this tier. I think there's a lot of very good wide receivers and very good fantasy contributors in this tier, as long as we can find some landing spots for these individuals. And the guy that I'm going to take at number 8 here, I still love him. I really do. I believe that he's just going to have a really good, and we play predominantly best ball, but I'm going to just believe in my guy, Troy Franklin. I'm going to keep going back to Troy Franklin here, man. I know there's a lot of hype for Brian Thomas. There's a lot of noise for, for Adonai Mitchell and Xavier Worthy, and there's all these other guys, but I still love Troy Franklin. I love his field stretching ability. He's a scrappy dude. The way he wins, really enjoy watching Troy Franklin play. And if he is able to be a field stretcher at the next level and just be a number 2 in an offense, that's kind of what I'm hoping for. Give me those big time weeks and give me some Troy Franklin.
See, this is what we keep going back to every time that Troy Franklin's name is brought up. But I think he's so much more than a field stretcher. And
True.
It's interesting because I think it was one of our guys, Fantasy Genes over on DD, he put out one of the spiderweb charts that we do where it compares all of their all of the prospects' top 6 best attributes or all of their measurables within just a statistical format. And they're he's very similar to JMO, which is interesting because I hated JMO coming out, and he was like my wide receiver 6 or 7 while other people had him at 1. And now this year, a guy who statistically correlates a lot to JMO in Troy Franklin, I really like, because I don't think he's just a field stretcher, which is what I thought of JMO whenever he was coming out. And it's not really what he's turned into, but he's basically been this speed guy who you just have to get the ball into his hands, but he can't catch the ball. Troy Franklin, I think, is so much better than that in terms of what he can do at every level of the field. I don't believe he's just a vertical pass catcher. He worked, again, in this Oregon offense that worked a lot at the line of scrimmage, but he was very good there. And so I think that he has a lot more to his skill set than just being a vertical stretcher, who honestly, I think compares to a little bit more to this guy that a lot more people will have at 4 and the better prospect compared to Troy Franklin, and that'll be Brian Thomas. I think a lot of people are going to have Brian Thomas locked in as their number 4 whenever we get all the way through this process. We'll see what his testing numbers come out as. I honestly think he's a little bit slower than everybody else is thinking he's going to run, which I think was in the price picks and underdog circles of where he was running his 40 was, I think, the fastest one on the market. And I honestly don't think that's it. I think it's Troy Franklin along with a little bit better of a route tree. So Brian Thomas for me would be my number 5 wide receiver, and he comes off the board here at number 9 overall.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. I'm going to just jump into number 10 here. I'm hoping you leave. There's a guy I want to bring up, but I'm just not going to do it yet. So I'm going to just jump into Xavier Worthy. I still believe in Xavier Worthy, and I know there's knocks on his game. He's obviously had some big time performances. We talk about a field stretcher, and you always mention the fact that Quinn Ewers has missed this guy so many times when he's just wide open downfield. And I just feel like at the next level, he's going to find himself in a situation where he can, again, have big plays. I do think he has a little bit more ability underneath, and not to the extent of Troy Franklin maybe, but I do think that he has the ability to win underneath as well for certain routes. So I want to see how he's utilized at the next level, but that's why I am taking X Worthy here at number 10, just because of that big time splash upside.
And actually give me my decision between 2 wide receivers that I actually still have ahead of Xavier Worthy before we get to the combine.
Ooh.
And there's a little bit of I don't know, do I go for the security or do I go for what the upside play is? And you know what? We're sitting here in a pre-combine mock. I'm going to go for the upside, and I think I'm going to go for the better overall athletic guy. And I'm actually going to go with his own teammate, and I'm going to go with Adonai Mitchell out of Texas as well. He's the wide. I have him above Xavier Worthy. I think if he hits his ceiling, he's a much better all around wide receiver than Worthy. Worthy is, to me, one trick pony. He was used at the line of scrimmage a lot, but he wasn't making the first guy miss, much unlike my guy, Troy Franklin. I think their games compare a lot together, but I think I have Troy Franklin way above Xavier Worthy. Adonai Mitchell, though, has a lot of tools and traits that I really like. Does he show it all the time? No. But if he hits his ceiling and if he tests well this next week or this next 2 days or so after this is being aired, I think he's going to be the one who vaults himself way up the boards.
These are two players, obviously, on the same team that you and I will be opposites on for a while because I'm not a huge Mitchell fan. I like you said, there's times that he flashes where I'm like, oh wow, that was a great play, or he really ran a very crisp route there, and then the next time he runs the exact same one, you're just like, what was that? And I'm just
it
like,
needs to all come together, but I
Yeah.
love what I see in the flashes.
Absolutely agree. So now that you have Mitchell here, I'm actually going to go back to a different position. I forgot what I was going to do here. There's still a guy I'm hoping I get to talk about, but we're just going to go back to the quarterback position. And a guy that has been rising up charts here is going to be JJ McCarthy. And I know we both forgot about this at this point, but yeah, I probably would have taken JJ McCarthy a little bit earlier than here at the 12 slot. Potentially, I may have actually taken him over X Worthy. If you want to flip flop these just for sake of it, no. If JJ McCarthy gets top 15 draft capital, I don't know how you don't take him in the first. I think he's going to be up there in the 108, 110 range when all is said and done, depending on that landing spot, because I do think he might go to a better situation for him.
It's interesting because we've done this process so many times, right? That we just kind of dismiss him as not being top 12 draft capital. And then we've seen everything come out over the past couple of weeks where it almost seems like a lock that one of these teams is going to take him. And if he gets the capital, he has to go higher than this. But I think both of us are questionable still on whether that's going to happen. But the narrative and the steam around it is so high. So, all right, let's do a little bit of revisionist history on this draft just so we can give the people what's actually going to happen if this were to happen. He's top 12, whether that's the Falcons, whether it's the Vikings, whether it's the Raiders. Where would you put him in here? Because I'd put him in at 108.
I think that's where I'm taking him to. I do think that if he has any weapons of value around him, I'm good with it. I mean, honestly, at that point, you just got to do it. You just have to take it. If he goes to the Falcons, I mean, oh my goodness, you have to take him. Like, just saying that name specifically, Vikings, same kind of thing. Like they have weapons where you can just see people getting excited. Forget the play on the field. People will just be stoked for JJ McCarthy and like what that fantasy upside could be. So absolutely would be taking him at the 108, potentially 107, but I'd say 108.
Yeah, I think that one's where you just depend a little bit more on format, what your team need is, quarterback, tight end. I'd honestly probably even lean more into the quarterback just because of the upside that holds if he does hit even to a Brock Purdy level, to a Tagovailoa level. That quarterback's going to be worth more than Brock Bowers is by this time next year. So I could see that as well. I could even see him moving up to 106. So it's a very interesting one. I don't want to get it too ahead of our skis, but from everything the NFL is telling us, he should go higher here than the 112. I'm glad you saved us from that. But I'm also glad I get to talk about one of my other guys that I'm really high on and one of the two wide receivers that you had left me before Xavier Worthy came off the board, and that's Ladd McConkey. Okay. One of my favorite wide receivers in this draft. He runs with an absolute violence to his routes that I like to say. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of tropes to the Cooper Kupps, Wes Welkers for Ladd McConkey, but he's so much more gifted athletically than that. At least I think so. We'll see whatever we get here in the next couple of days of the combine, but I think he's going to test very, very well. Not like what people would profile him as exactly. And so you compare that with a subpar production profile while he was at Georgia, but he was dealing with injuries all the time. He was dealing with players over him during some of those points as well. Ladd McConkey, if you just look at him on tape, should be probably a top 6 wide receiver. There's other things that could bring him down, like that statistical profile, but here, one of the best route runners in this class. I really think that he could very well be a type of guy who is just an absolute target hog for an offense who is much more gifted athletically than people give him credit for.
I do love Ladd McConkey. I think that his ability to win is awesome, within the routes, and I think that he's going to have like an immediate role right away on a team. So I do want to see what happens there. I'm going to get into my next guy because I'm just so excited to talk about this. Roman Wilson.
You bought in.
I have. I mean, and this is a guy I told you about when we were looking at film and everything like that. It's like he just looks like the best player on the field, man. He just looked like the best player on the field. Like statistically, sometimes things weren't always there, but like just the way he ran, how smooth he was, like he was absolutely the best player on the field. And that's like the best way I can kind of describe his game. It's just like effortless, smooth, and just looked like he was better than everybody. And I love that ability. I do think that there is room for growth for sure, but I think he's going to be a big riser this weekend. I do think that he's going to be a big riser in some people's draft boards. And if he's, I know Ray GQ has been one that's been talking about him quite a bit and absolutely been pumping up some Roman Wilson. I think we might actually see him as a first round draft pick when all is said and done for the rookie drafts.
I want to see him test athletically because for some reason it didn't pop for me.
Ooh.
Maybe because I didn't come in with priors whenever I actually put him on the film, it just didn't hit for me for some reason. And so I have him lower, but if he ends up testing like everybody says he's going to test, then we'll start to change the narrative. But for some reason, it just didn't pop for me. So I'll go in and I'll change up positions once again, and I'll go with my RB1. You already know who it is if you've been watching this channel, watching the last. Not Trey Benson. Good God, no, no. Put that off the screen. Bucky Irving all the way down there to RB6. Get him on the screen. Bucky Irving is my RB1, and I'm going to take him here as the first running back off the board at the 2-3. We talked about it, or I talked about it in the running back video that I put out, or that we put out. Yeah, we were doing that one together. Wide receivers was the one that I put out solo. So Bucky Irving, my RB1. I'm not going to go against my own rankings at this point throughout the process. Before we know combine, before we know landing spots, I'm going to stick with my guns, and I'm going to put Bucky Irving here up at the RB1.
I'm just going to go ahead and take my RB1 at this point too, because I feel like this is the range where you can kind of go after and chase some running back production if you want to, or you can go after, some of these mid-tier question mark wide receivers at this point. So I'm going to go with Jonathan Brooks. I know the injury, that we're dealing with here. I get it. I'm all for it. I fell in love with J.K. Dobbins pre-injury, and I just keep falling in love with these ACL injuries. I do think that he's going to be fine. It's going to work itself out, but again, it could be a loss of year production for Jonathan Brooks as far as taking a hit to his fantasy production. Hopefully, he's healthy week one. Sounds like there's a possibility that's an actual thing that's happening, but definitely preparing for him to be, missing the first 4 weeks of the season. Just think the talent is there. And if I can have a RB1 for the back half of the year, I'd be stoked to get me some Jonathan Brooks.
All right, and I'm going to go back to another position I was a little bit forgot about. I think this is the range that I have the hardest time where it's just so landing spot dependent for me. Where like I have the couple of guys that I like. I could go back into my RB3 who you're a little bit lower on potentially. I don't think you are anymore after we talked through everything on the last show. So you might take him from me, which I would be devastated about. But I don't think he deserves to really go here yet at this point before we see the athletic combine testing and before we see the landing spots. So I'm going to go with my quarterback 5 off the board, and it's going to be Bo Nix. I think the NFL likes him higher than most people do within the community, especially if you've been watching him like I had all the way during his days at Auburn, back whenever I was like a sophomore in college. He's been in college for a long time, a lot longer than me at least, and I think he's coming out now, but I think he's a lot better. I think the NFL likes him a lot better. Does he step onto the field day one? No, but in Superflex formats, I think he gets late day 1, early day 2 capital. And at that point, I think that Bo Nix, I'm going to project him to come off the board at QB5 here. And so I'm going to take him at the 205.
I thought you were going to go with a different position, which is what I'm going to do. Just take JT Sanders here. Don't mind the Bo Nix pick here. I just think, again, Superflex formats, I do feel like people dismiss Jatavian Sanders because of how good people believe Brock Bowers is. But I don't think that there's a mass. I do think that Bowers is better, but I do think that Jatavian Sanders is a different type of tight end. And I still think that he can get on the field right away, be an impact tight end in the NFL. And when you're in the second round here, where you have a bunch of question marks, Lad McConkey, Roman Wilson, Bucky Irving, Brooks, like honestly, I could have seen myself taking Jatavian Sanders as early as a 201, depending on lots of different factors here. But it sounds like he's going to be an NFL first round draft pick, and if that's the case, or even in the early second, I'm for it. I am all here for some JT Sanders.
Real quick on Sanders before we move on, and I'm going to take Jalen Wright.
I knew you would.
And I don't need we don't need to talk about it anymore because I think we spent like 10 minutes in the running back episode talking about Jalen Wright. How do you think he tests athletically? Because that's my concern now with JT Sanders is he said he hopes to run in the 4.6s.
I mean,
And that's where I'm like, I mean, I thought he was a much better athlete than that whenever I'm watching him. And like he comes out, his lines all come out at like 4.55. And then he's asked the media at the podium days during his combine that just came out today. And he's hoping to run in the 4.6s. That's not what I think JT Sanders is. And if he does that, like if he runs a mid 4.6, that's not the
Gronk
athlete
was a
that I thought we were
4.7
getting with
guy.
Sanders.
Gronk was a 4.7 guy, like most tight
I mean, it
ends.
doesn't matter at the tight end as much,
Yeah.
but for a smaller tight end, and I know he's not smaller, but I don't know. I thought he was much more gifted athletically than I thought he was much more like the Bowers type, and we'll see what he. I guess we won't see what he runs either, but I don't know. I whenever that came out, it might have tainted my view of JT Sanders a little bit, where I thought he was more of that like true move Y, and I know he does a little bit more blocking wise than even Bowers does. So it's interesting, but it might have tainted my view on him a little bit. And we'll see once we get the full combine tomorrow or
I'm not
tomorrow or
worried.
Saturday.
He's got some guy, some friend that has a big time bet on him, and he wanted to make sure that he could have him hit that under. So he's like, yeah, he's like, I probably will run a 4.55. Let's get that up to a 4.6 so we really can hit it. So no, I'm just not really concerned. Like a 4.65, that's still fast for a guy that's probably 6'4", 245, like big dude. I'm not concerned. I think the lateral agility, from what I've seen on tape, I'm all good with what I've seen with JT Sanders. So getting here into the back half of the second round, I mean, this is really at this point in the process where there's a lot of kind of question marks, and this is where I'm going to put the biggest question mark for me, and that is Keon Coleman. Yep. I'm glad you circled it because a lot of people are going to be like, yo, y'all forgot about Keon. No, we didn't forget about Keon.
No.
Both of us are just super low on Keon Coleman. And if he works out, great. If he doesn't, I think we're going to be taking him in the third round type of thing. Or, he's like, that's the type of player I think he could be. He could be a big time performer if he can develop the right skill set. I just don't see it, man. I just don't see it. And I am okay missing and swinging and missing on Keon Coleman. If I actually get him somewhere, maybe I trade him away immediately before I see him set foot on a field. That one scares me.
The issue that I have with this ranking and what we're both going to do of putting him down here this low is the NFL is going to like someone in the NFL is going to like him much more than we do.
For sure.
And he's going to be a top 50 pick. And a lot of these wide receivers might go behind him. And that's where I have the difficulty of like, it's not even if that happens, it's almost once that happens. Where does he go then in our rankings? And I don't have an answer for that right now, but yeah, I'm not a Keon Coleman fan. I mean, it feels almost tropish to say that you're not a Keon Coleman fan in the fantasy circles right now, just because statistically he's not great. Tape wise, it doesn't seem like much people like him either. Like everything other than just his natural size seems like in the highlight play seems like you shouldn't like Keon Coleman, but the NFL, from everything that we've been told, still loves him. So it's one of the hardest players for me to put into an actual slot. I don't know where he's going to end up landing, but it's going to be a lot lower than consensus. But the consensus also seems to hate him. So
I will say before you make these last couple picks, when it comes to Coleman, I just don't think I'm going to raise him up. There are guys that I look at in drafts and I just say, I have zero interest, and maybe I miss out on some ADV, right? Like maybe I miss out on the opportunity to trade him because other people are going to be so high on him. But I know that my cost to acquire is not going to be the 208 in the future. Like if I have to spend my 201 to get Keon Coleman, or maybe the 111, like am I actually willing to do that? I don't think so. And so I probably won't have a lot of him, and I'm okay missing out on him. I missed out on QJ. I'm good with that. If I want to buy QJ, I can. Like if there's I have a lot of opportunities to buy some of these players, and I feel like that's Keon Coleman for me. Is there's going to be a buy window because of his production here.
All right, so we've got only 4 picks left in this 2-round mock that I think we're going to stop it at, and there's a lot of players that I think a lot of people are going to be pissed off at us about that we don't have in our top 2 rounds. Like I'm going through and I'm like, this guy should be a top 2 pick. This guy should be a top 2 pick. But whenever you start putting in a lot of people that a lot of community consensus won't have Roman Wilson in there right now. Maybe Ladd McConkey slips to the 3rd. Maybe you don't have a second tight end, another quarterback. We don't even have Penix off the board. Like I want to put all these guys into the 2nd round, and I don't know where exactly they land, but I'm going to go with my next RB off the board. And a lot of people are going to be looking at either Trey Benson or Blake Corum, but I'm going to go with my RB4. If you followed along with the RB show that we just put out, Braylon Allen, we talked about him. He's an absolute bruiser, north and south guy who has a little bit more athleticism than I think a lot of people give him credit for. It's the RB position right now, and unless you can tell me that Michael Penix is getting that top 50 draft capital that I'm not really sure that he gets at this point, he'd be my other pick here. And then there's a couple of other wide receivers if they get the capital, but Braylon Allen, I think, combined with the community consensus, even without the draft capital, people are going to like Braylon Allen, and I like him too. So he's my 209 here. I feel bad leaving out some other people because I only have one more pick, and I hope you take at least 2 of the other guys that I want to put here in the 2nd round. But he's the one that I have to put in the 2nd round at the back end.
I'm sticking with Blake Corum. I'm just gonna stick with the running back position here. I have him and Braylon Allen back to back in my ranking, so I'm good with either one of these guys here at this point in the draft. Again, people are going to be questioning his size. There are some times where Blake Corum is just, runs into walls, and then all of a sudden he breaks some nice smooth runs. I do think Blake Corum is going to be better than anticipated, so I'm going to take him back here at the 10.
All right, I'm gonna put him up here. I'm just gonna go with the quarterback position.
Don't do it. Go ahead. No, you can take him.
Because the thing is, I almost want to take Spencer Rattler instead.
Oh,
I almost want to take Spencer Rattler instead. That's the thing that's like killing me about this pick, is I don't think they're that different in the NFL's eyes.
Yeah.
And then like, if I don't think they're that different, then should I just go with the wide receiver that I think if he has a really good combine, like a lot of people are projecting for, that is a lot better than some people are thinking? I could go with Xavier Legette as well, because if he has a good combine, which people don't think he's as good athletically, then he could be up here as well. So I have a couple of guys. I'm still going to go with Michael Penix, though. I think that the Rattler hype is a little bit too much. The NFL is telling us differently. They're very closely related in Michael Penix and Spencer Rattler, apparently, to what the NFL is telling us from all of the news blurbs coming out from the people who are in the know. How much are they in the know actually, and how much are they just being fed absolute lies? I don't know, but I'm going to take the guy who was in the national championship game, Michael Penix, and we'll go with that one. Whatever quarterback is here at the quarterback 6 probably will end up going higher than the 211, but because we don't know at this point right now, he drops here. I'll still take Michael Penix, though.
Honestly, I'd be good with that. I could pass. But yeah. I get taking the gamble on a quarterback just because of the position itself. So last pick here to round things out. I struggle. There's a lot of names, like you said. There's some names here that I want to put in. You mentioned Xavier Legette. Not really on my list that I'm interested in. Excuse me, I'm dying over here.
I can talk about another guy, and I can talk about Jalen Polk as well, who is literally the most just all around good wide receiver, who's playing behind playing alongside of 2 other top 3 round wide receivers as well, who I have very similarly ranked to Xavier Legette. So Jalen Polk is another guy that I want to put in the top 2 rounds too.
Yeah, Jalen Polk is a good one. Seen a lot of good things from him on tape. Not a lot after the catch. I'm going to go Javon Baker, actually. And I really like what I see on film. And obviously, like, I'm not allowed to say this. Like, the people out there just are trying to kill me for saying this.
Oh, you're being killed right now.
I'm being
really just take a breath,
slaughtered
as we're just trying to close this one out. Good goodness. The people are coming heavy for you right now.
Great route runner. Big. Like him. Good dude.
I don't think we need much more context than that. Otherwise, Chase might die literally on screen as we try to wrap this one out. Goodness, if you believe in the fantasy football gods at all, Javon Baker will be one of the worst prospects in this class. If you believe that the football gods are cursing this show and Javon Baker potentially, I don't know whether it's just because Javon Baker is within his top. What do we got? I mean, this is a wide receiver draft class, though, right? We've got 3 in the top 6. We've got another 4 in the back end. That's 7. And then we've got another 4 wide receivers in the top 24. 11 of our top 24 picks are wide receivers. And I think we all wanted to put in, like, I wanted to put in Jalen Polk. I want to put in Xavier Leggett. Devontae Walker for me is personally right on the borderline of that one. Keon Coleman, he's going to get the draft capital and he deserves to be there, but I don't even know if it wouldn't be other than draft capital that I put him in my top 24. But Chase, are you back with us from the land of the dead of the Javon Baker haters realm?
I think I got killed off for my Javon Baker pick right there. But I think the NFL is going to like him. I think he's going to have a good weekend. I think that's it for me, and I think that's it for this episode of our pre-combine rookie mock. We will have some rookie mocks coming out after this. Anything you want to plug before we wrap out of here?
Last thing we got to plug. Obviously, if you're tapping into us, you're probably tapping into them as well. But we will have a skill position combine show over on Destination Devi that we will both be a part of in some aspect. For how long, we don't really know. But Destination Devi YouTube is going to be going live throughout all 8, I think, hours of I don't know if it's going to be all 8, but we're going to be going live and doing mocks like these. We're going to be doing reactions to the 40 times, the throwing events from all the quarterbacks that you see on here: Bo Nix, Penix, McCarthy, Rattler. All of these guys are invited to the combine. We're going to be doing instant takeaways and everything like that. So if you're tapping into this, you should be tapping in over there as well. You definitely need to be tapping into that. We will be doing a lot more of these mocks, like I just said. So it'll be an absolute awesome time of just trying to grind through those 8 hours, kind of like the if you watched any of the draft marathon spectaculars that we've put together over the last couple of years, I'm sure it'll be a lot like that. It'll be a hell of a lot of fun. So can't wait to do that. Can't wait to bring this one to y'all, and can't wait to see you all back here on the Over Fantasy Traction podcast thing. I don't know.